Tonight, we're going deep into one of the most terrifying events of 2026. A story that involves nuclear sites, ballistic missiles that shouldn't exist, a child bleeding from shrapnel wounds, and a question that no one wants to say out loud. How close did we just come to a nuclear catastrophe? Stay with me, because what happened in the southern Israeli desert tonight didn't just change the Middle East, it may have just changed the world. To understand what happened on March 21st, 2026, you need to understand where we are in this war. Because yes, this is a war. A full-scale, multi-front, US and Israel versus Iran war that has been raging since February 28, 2026, when American and Israeli forces launched a massive bombing campaign against Iranian targets. The stated goal? Stop Iran from developing a nuclear bomb. Destroy its long-range ballistic missile program. And if the regime happens to fall along the way, nobody in Washington or Tel Aviv is going to cry about it. For 3 weeks, the skies over Tehran have been burning. For 3 weeks, Iran has been firing back. At Israel, at US bases across the region, at Gulf states, at shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. The war has been everywhere. It's been loud. It's been relentless. But what happened on Saturday night, March 21st, was something different. Something that made analysts, generals, and diplomats go quiet in a way that tells you everything. It began, as so many escalations do, with a strike that someone didn't want to admit to. Early Saturday morning, Iran's Atomic Energy Organization announced that the Natanz nuclear enrichment complex had been hit. Natanz, the beating heart of Iran's nuclear ambitions. The facility buried deep underground in the desert, some 220 kilometers southeast of Tehran, packed with thousands of centrifuges spinning uranium toward weapons-grade enrichment. Iran said it was the Americans and the Israelis. The United States said nothing publicly. Israel's military? They said, and this is a direct quote, they were not aware of a strike. Not aware. Right. This was not the first time Natanz had been hit. The same facility was struck during the 12-day war with Iran back in June of 2025. But that was then. This is now. And Iran's patience had run out. Iranian officials rushed to reassure the public. No radioactive leakage. No nuclear accident. The UN's nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, confirmed it. No abnormal radiation levels detected. 2 buildings were visibly damaged, but the nuclear material itself appeared untouched. But Iran wasn't interested in reassurance anymore. Iran was interested in retaliation. At approximately 7 p.m. on Saturday evening, air raid sirens screamed across southern Israel. Somewhere over the Negev desert, that vast, ancient, sun-scorched wilderness in southern Israel, a ballistic missile was descending. Israel's air defense systems activated. The interceptors fired. And then, nothing. The missile wasn't stopped. It hit Dimona. Let me say that again, because I want you to feel the weight of those 3 words. It hit Dimona. Dimona. A quiet desert city of around 35,000 people, surrounded by scrubland and silence, except for one thing. Just outside Dimona sits the Shimon Negev Nuclear Research Center, a facility that has operated since 1958, a facility that Israel has never officially acknowledged as anything other than a research center, a facility that virtually every intelligence agency on the planet believes is the source of Israel's nuclear weapons, the only nuclear arsenal in the entire Middle East. Israel has never confirmed it has nuclear weapons. That's the policy. Ambiguity. Silence. But everyone knows. And now, an Iranian ballistic missile had just slammed into that city. Israel's military confirmed it, a direct missile hit on a building. Emergency responders from Magen David Adom, Israel's version of the Red Cross, flooded the scene. Their teams treated over 33 people injured at multiple sites across the city. Among them, a 10-year-old boy, in serious condition, bleeding from shrapnel wounds. A woman in her 30s, injured by glass. Dozens more, some from the blast, some from falling while running to shelter, some simply from shock and panic. Paramedic Carmel Cohen described the scene. Extensive damage and chaos. One building, destroyed. A 1-story structure, leveled. Rubble where walls once stood. Rescue crews picked through the debris in hard hats. At one point, according to images released by the IDF, a soldier rescued a dog from the wreckage. And somewhere, in a control room being monitored by both sides and by international agencies, the question hung in the air like smoke. Did that missile come anywhere near the nuclear facility itself? The IAEA said it had received no indication of damage to the Negev Nuclear Research Center. Radiation monitors showed nothing unusual. But let's be honest, the fact that we were even asking the question tells you everything about how dangerous this moment truly was. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, didn't mince words about what this was. Iranian state television called the attack a response to the Natanz strike. The IRGC framed it as retaliation. Eye for an eye, nuclear site for nuclear site. And then Iran's state-aligned Tasnim news agency went further. They published a statement that should make every world leader sit up in their chair. No area is safe from Iranian missiles. The enemy must surrender before it is too late. No area is safe. This wasn't just a military communique. This was a declaration, a signal sent not just to Israel, but to every government watching. Meanwhile, the IDF confirmed that it had carried out its own strike, this time on Malek Ashtar University in Tehran. Not a normal university. According to the Israeli military, this facility, operating under Iran's Ministry of Defense and under international sanctions, was being used to develop components for nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. It was, the IDF said, a strategic research and development site. Universities, nuclear plants, desert cities. No corner of this conflict is untouched. But here's what's haunting the Israeli military tonight, and it's something that's not getting nearly enough attention. The Iron Dome didn't stop the missile. Not just in Dimona, also in Arad, a city some 25 kilometers northeast of Dimona, where a second Iranian missile struck later that same evening, injuring at least 64 people, 7 of them in serious condition, 15 in moderate condition, 42 others lightly hurt. That's nearly 100 people wounded in a single evening from direct missile impacts. Schools across Israel were immediately shifted to remote learning for Sunday and Monday. Israeli parents were going to bed Saturday night wondering if it was safe to send their children anywhere. IDF spokesman Brigadier General Effie Defrin addressed the nation. The air defense systems operated but did not intercept the missile. We will investigate the incident and learn from it. An investigation. After the damage is done. After the child is in hospital with shrapnel. After the buildings are rubble. This is a chilling moment for Israel's defense establishment. The Iron Dome, David's Sling, Arrow. These systems have long been considered among the most sophisticated missile defenses on Earth. But Iran's missiles got through. Twice in one night. The IDF was quick to note these were not new or unfamiliar missile types, and yet the systems failed. That is a question that will echo through Israeli military briefings for months to come. Why didn't the shield hold? Now, if everything I've told you so far wasn't alarming enough, let's talk about Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is a tiny coral atoll in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It is the largest island in the Chagos archipelago, a remote speck of land that is technically British territory. And it hosts one of the most strategically vital military installations on the planet, a joint US-UK airbase that has supported American operations from Vietnam to Iraq to Afghanistan to strikes on Yemen's Houthis. About 2,500 mostly American military personnel are stationed there. B-2 stealth bombers have launched from Diego Garcia. It is, in every sense of the word, a power projection hub for the United States in the Indo-Pacific. It is also located approximately 4,000 kilometers from Iran. On Friday, the day before the Dimona strike, Iran fired 2 ballistic missiles toward Diego Garcia. Neither missile hit the base. One failed mid-flight. A U.S. warship fired an interceptor at the other. But the mere act of firing, the attempt, has sent shockwaves through the intelligence community. Because here's the problem. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi had said publicly, just last month, that Iran's ballistic missiles had a range of roughly 2,000 kilometers. Diego Garcia is 4,000 kilometers away. Double. Twice the publicly admitted range. Iran's semi-official Mehr news agency acknowledged the attempted strike and declared it a significant step, boasting that Iran's missile range is beyond what the enemy previously imagined. And Israel's military chief? He looked at that attempted strike and issued a warning that should make every European capital pay attention. The IDF chief said, and I'm going to quote him directly, "Their range reaches the capitals of Europe. Berlin, Paris, and Rome are all within direct threat range. Berlin, Paris, Rome." Let that sink in. We are no longer talking about a regional conflict. We are no longer talking about missiles that can reach Israel or US bases in the Gulf. We are talking about missiles that may be capable of reaching the heart of Western Europe. Because this conflict is spread well beyond Israel and Iran. Iran has been launching missiles and drones at an almost incomprehensible scale. Jordan's military reported that 240 missiles and drones had been fired at Jordanian territory since the war began, wounding 24 people. The UAE's defense ministry said it had intercepted 3 ballistic missiles and 8 drone attacks in a single day. An Iranian drone struck a Kuwait oil refinery and sparked fires. Iran's naval forces claim to have destroyed facilities at the Al Minhad base in the UAE and the Ali Al Salem air base in Kuwait. The G7 foreign ministers and the European Union issued a joint statement demanding an immediate and unconditional halt to Iranian attacks, condemning strikes against civilians in Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Jordan, and Iraq. That's 8 countries, beyond Israel, absorbing the fallout of this war. And the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow choke point through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil supply flows, has been effectively strangled. Daily transit calls through the strait have crashed from highs of over 120 earlier this year to nearly zero. Oil prices have spiked. Brent crude hit $112 a barrel on Friday, its highest since July 2022. 23 nations, the UAE, UK, France, Germany, Japan, Canada, South Korea, Australia, and 15 others, issued a joint statement condemning Iran's attacks on commercial shipping and signaling readiness to support secure transit through the Strait of Hormuz. The world is being dragged in, slowly, reluctantly, but being dragged in nonetheless. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke to the nation Saturday night. He called it a very difficult evening in the battle for our future. And then he said what everyone knew he would say. We will continue to strike our enemies on all fronts with determination. Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, who took power after the death of his father Ali Khamenei, declared that Iran had dealt its enemies a dizzying blow in the war. Iran's IRGC spokesperson gave a press conference claiming Iran was still building missiles despite Israel's ongoing bombardment. Hours later, Israeli strikes reportedly killed that very spokesperson. And in Washington, where President Trump had floated the idea of winding down the conflict just days earlier, the mood appeared to shift again. The White House confirmed it was working on plans to secure the Strait of Hormuz. Thousands more Marines were being dispatched to the region. The U.S. military said it had conducted over 8,000 strikes against Iranian targets since the war began, claiming Iran had lost significant combat capability. But tonight's events suggest Iran still has more than enough left to cause devastation. Meanwhile, France 24's analysts put it bluntly. The war is showing no signs of abating. There is no exit tunnel in sight. Iran is as determined as ever to retaliate for what it calls an unprovoked war of aggression. Let's come back to the question I asked at the very beginning. How close did we come to a nuclear catastrophe tonight? Technically, based on IAEA readings and what we know right now, the answer is not very close. The Dimona Research Center itself was not hit. Radiation levels are normal. The IAEA confirmed no damage to facilities containing nuclear material. But think about what it took to get that answer. A ballistic missile broke through Israel's most advanced air defense systems. It struck a city whose entire reason for existing, in geopolitical terms, is that secret nuclear facility sitting just outside its limits. Dozens of people were wounded, including a child. Buildings were destroyed. The margin between a conventional military strike and a nuclear incident tonight was measured not in policy or diplomacy, but in meters, in trajectory, in whatever combination of luck, physics, and imprecision meant that the missile landed where it did, and not 10 kilometers in a different direction. And Iran has signaled it will keep firing. It has signaled it can reach farther than anyone thought. It has signaled that for every strike on Natanz, Dimona is on the target list. The UN's nuclear watchdog chief, Rafael Grossi, has called for maximum military restraint to avoid any risk of a nuclear accident. Maximum military restraint. Does that sound like what's happening right now? Here is where we are tonight. 3 weeks into a war that began with American and Israeli bombers over Tehran. A conflict that has now seen nuclear sites on both sides struck or targeted. A conflict where Iranian missiles are reaching places they were never supposed to reach. A conflict where the Iron Dome has failed. Where European capitals are being named as potential targets, where the global oil supply is at risk, where 23 nations are preparing to defend a strait, where a 10-year-old boy is in hospital with shrapnel in his body, and where both sides are saying with absolute conviction that they are not done. There is an old saying, in war, the first casualty is truth. But in a war fought this close to nuclear facilities, the second casualty could be something far, far worse. The world is watching Dimona tonight. The world is watching Natanz. The world is watching the Strait of Hormuz and the skies over southern Israel and the Indian Ocean, where missiles that weren't supposed to exist are being fired at bases that were supposed to be unreachable. This is not a regional conflict anymore. This is a moment that will define the next decade, and possibly beyond. Stay informed, stay sharp, and ask the questions that those in power don't want you to ask. If you found this video important, share it, because these are the stories that matter. I'll see you in the next one.